Good evening, this is Viewpoint. I'm Zakka. Jacob, there is a heated battle going on in the Supreme Court right now about this 2-acre property in Bangalore, in Chamrajpet. It's called the Eidgah Maidan. The status of the Eidgah Maidan will be decided today in the Supreme Court, where it's a tense battle, a high-profile legal battle between Kapil Sibal, who's representing the Waqf Board, and Mukul Rohatgi, who's representing the state government. The Waqf Board has challenged in the Supreme Court the decision by the BBMP to lease out the property for Ganesh Chaturthi celebrations. Their claim is this was an Eidgah Maidan. The only celebrations that ever happened in this ground were that of Eid or Bakrid or any Muslim festival. The High Court had earlier said that the Maidan can be used for other purposes, including for Ganesh Chaturthi celebrations. That decision by the High Court is under challenge in the Supreme Court. And the reason why this particular verdict today is going to be closely watched and it could be precedent setting is because there are numerous such Eidgah Maidans across the country for which title deeds are not clear, property papers are not clear, revenue receipts are not clear, but ownership seems to be with one set of individuals. The question that's being asked is also of double standards. If you can have Ram Leela Maidans in Delhi and Mumbai and other cities across this country and use it not just for Ram Leela and for Hindu festivals, but also for other purposes, why can't the same be applied for the Eidgah Maidan? But first, the story so far in what has been a tense day, a tense run-up to Ganeshotsav. Let's first bring you up to speed with the breaking developments that are happening inside the Supreme Court. Like I said, it's a high-profile legal battle. Mukul Rohatgi representing the Karnataka state, Kapil Sibal representing the Waqf Board. Mukul Rohatgi has been arguing on behalf of the state that nobody can claim exclusive ownership to a burial ground in the country. In this case, of course, the Eidgah Maidan primarily used for burial purposes. At the end of the day, what is the position is his question. It's an open ground. It's a playground where children play. There are prayers allowed for 2 days in a year for Eid and for Bakrid. There is a municipal tank. There are other BBMP facilities. Children are playing round the year. Can this be claimed as exclusive possession? That is the contention made by Mukul Rohatgi. Let me go across to Harish Upadhyay, who's been tracking the story. So high-profile legal battle going on in the Supreme Court. Bring us up to speed with what is at stake in this battle. It's not just a question of ownership or title deed. This is far bigger than that. This could very well open up a Pandora's box where hundreds of Maidans, not just in Karnataka state, but across the country, hundreds of such quote-unquote Waqf properties could come under challenge. So what is riding here? What is at stake?
Absolutely, Zakka. Just look at Karnataka. You've had at least around in excess of 100 properties that the Waqf board has. Many of them don't even have proper title deeds. And if you look at the arguments made in the Supreme Court today, the state is demolishing the premise on which the Waqf has claimed several properties. They're saying just because you've used it for a number of years, you can't say you own that property. They're saying just because this hasn't been given for any other celebration, you can't claim it. They're saying you can't apply the Waqf Act of 1995 for a transaction that might have happened in the 50s or 60s. They're also saying that if there are entries in the Waqf Board's register, that doesn't give you any sort of legal backing to claim it's your property. They're saying a property can be claimed only when you file a title suit or you have deeds to show that you own it. And in almost a majority of Waqf properties, especially in Karnataka, the Waqf Board doesn't have title deeds or clear papers. A lot of it is from the Mysore Empire era, and that hasn't been successfully, in a way, that transaction hasn't been shown when the Karnataka state got formed or when municipalities got formed. So a lot of it has been lost in that transition as well. And many properties are with the Waqf board because they have the possession of it. They've been using it for a number of years. But the state making a very, very important point and demolishing some of these arguments, as you rightly pointed out, will have a far-reaching consequences every time a Waqf property gets dragged to the court and the government claims it's their property. So this is a judgment that will have far-reaching consequences, and that's one of the reasons why Kapil Sibal is saying that this has to be discussed much later, and we do not want this to be given to Ganesh Chaturthi celebration. It will open up a Pandora's box. You will have all sort of celebrations being allowed, and it also, they believe, this gives some sort of a legitimacy to the claim made by the Revenue Department that they are the owners of this land. So they don't want anything to change. They want a status quo, and then the court to hear this entire case of ownership at length.
Okay, we'll see how this plays out. There are two separate matters, of course. One is a question of ownership, who has the title deed, who has the property papers, who has the revenue receipts. That is a question of ownership. The other question, of course, that the court has to decide on is whether this property can be leased out for festivals other than Ramzan and, of course, Bakrid and other Muslim festivals for which it was being used, or can it be leased out for other festivities, including Hindu festivals like the Ganeshotsav, which is beginning tomorrow. Mohan Vishwa is spokesperson of the Karnataka BJP. He's joining us. We'll be joined by T.R. Prasad Gowda of the JDS in a moment. B.S. Arun is a senior journalist, and Satbi Shivanna is an advocate with the Karnataka High Court. Let me start with Mohan Vishwa. The contention by the Waqf board is that this 2.1 acre of land belongs to the Eidgah. It has been the case since the 1850s. And as per the Waqf Act, not just the 1995 one, there was one that was passed in 1954 as well. As per the Waqf Act, all Waqf properties belong to the Waqf board, whether it has title deed or no title deed. This is their contention, and it is up to the caretakers, the Waqf board appointed caretakers, to decide what the Maidan can be used for, whether it can be used for any other purposes other than Ramzan and Bakrid. Mohan Vishwa, respond.
See, Zakka, we have been witnessing, this issue from past 4 to 5 months. The issue with the Waqf board is the BBMP gave 2 months of ample amount of time. Okay, it's not 1 or 2 days; it's 2 months of time to produce what document they have to prove that that is their property. They haven't provided that. Okay, post that the BBMP Commissioner Tushar Mehta, initially there was some issue. Okay, he said it comes under BPMP. Later on, he said, no, since there was some sort of rectification happened in the Khata, so he said it belongs to, the Revenue Department. So 2 months, they have not submitted any document at all. If at all, if it belongs to them, they should have had some sort of document. Like as you said, all Waqf property, okay, belongs to Waqf board, post Waqf Act. Okay, so first of all, it should be a Waqf property to come under Waqf Act. So to prove that, they don't have any papers as of now. Okay, so that's why if that is the case, our revenue department have taken over the land. See, that's how it works. Okay, and we are very clear that if it is a government land, if it is a revenue department land, being a secular, it is our duty of the government to provide, usage of their land for all the religions. It can be for Hindus or Muslims or Christians, for any festival for that matter. So
okay,
anybody can use that. So that is our stand. This is not only even our government is also argued in Karnataka High Court, and the same thing is happening in Supreme Court also now.
Let me ask T.R. Prasad Gowda, the basic contention, sir, is does this Waqf board have the property title deed? Does it have revenue receipts from 1974? The BBMP has been saying that in 1974, there was a metropolis survey that they had undertaken. The Eidgah Maidan at that time was earmarked as a playground, as a civic property belonging to the city corporation. They also say that neither the Karnataka State Waqf Board at that time nor any other Muslim organization claiming ownership took part in this survey or was able to produce documents. So if they don't have the property title deeds, if they don't have the revenue receipts, then how can they claim ownership over this land? A land which has been declared by the municipal corporation as a playground.
Yeah, at this point of hour, I should speak the truth. Okay, and I know about this issue from quite a long time, and as a matter of fact, the there is a dispute. Of course, there is a dispute between Waqf Board and the BBMP. Actually, as a matter of fact, about portion of the land has left for the prayers for Muslim community. But not full land has left for the Waqf Board. Actually, till now, it is not declared as Waqf property. So I am from JDS, but I stand by my words because when I speak, I should tell you the truth. Portion of the land, about 10,000 square feet of land, has left for offering prayers for the Muslim community. The rest of the land can be utilized by the public. Of course, it is a BBMP land. So now Waqf Board is telling, and they are fighting in the court of law. In the High Court also, the High Court also reserved the powers to give it to any other celebrations.
Yes.
It is left to the government. That is all. That is what High Court of Karnataka has observed. And over that, Waqf Board has moved it to the Supreme Court. Now the question here is, Waqf Board moved it not to allow other religion people to
celebrate their festivals.
Supreme Court is going to allow their petition or not. That is the point at this point of hour. But as a matter of fact, this ground can be utilized by any other religion, irrespective. Because when I talk to you over the television, national television, I should tell you the truth. This is the truth.
Yeah, let me ask Advocate Shivanna. Now, two arguments are being made by Mr. Sibal in court, in the Supreme Court right now. Number one, he says that this is part of a political project. This is being done for political reasons because elections are nearby. There is a obvious communal polarization intent behind this move. Now, that is not a legal argument, but anyway, he has presented that in court. Number two, and I think the point that Mr. Prasad Gowda made is absolutely valid. If nobody is claiming ownership to the Eidgah. What they are saying is that the Maidan, which is 2.1 acres of land, which is a BBMP designated playground attached with the Eidgah, but it's a BBMP designated playground. That is the land that the BBMP is free to lease out to any person, whether it is for a festival or for a protest or for a cricket match. It's up to them.
Now, see, it is
Mr. Shivanna, yeah.
Understanding that the Mysore State Waqf Board declared this as Waqf land under Section 5.2. And under Section 5.4, it attained finality. So the land dispute with respect to whose land it is or not was settled as per the Mysore Waqf Board declaration under 5.4. Now, despite that, it is true that there is a dispute arising with respect to this land because their names have not been mutated into the land entries.
Yes.
Into the revenue entries, their names have not been mutated. But it is also a point of consideration that the Muslim community has been in possession of this land for over 200 years now. And it is for over 60 years that they have been conducting certain festivals or Muslim festivities in this particular ground. And it was never disputed then. It was never disputed now. After 200 years of possession, it is today, for the very first time, that the BBMP makes a claim over the property, and they say that the property belongs to us, and that is when the entire dispute.
No, Mr. Shivanna, there are two contentions in that argument. Number one, this Section 5.4 would apply if, let's say, the dispute is between the Waqf Board and let's say a Hindu organization or with another private individual. In that case, okay, 5.4 might apply. But the dispute is not between the Waqf Board and another individual or another body. The dispute is between the Waqf Board and the government. The state can take over any land where possession or ownership cannot be shown by a third party. That is number one. Number two, just a limited point. This is again something that Mr. Rohatgi cited in court today. Just because something has not happened until now, or just because something has been happening for a number of years, that does not mean that it sets a precedent. that does not mean that it cannot change. So if it has not been leased out for other religious festivals, then it doesn't mean it cannot happen from tomorrow. If the Waqf Board had the property papers, the title deed, the revenue receipts to show from 1974 or even earlier, then that's a different matter altogether. Then it is as good as a private property. In this case, it is not a private property. It's between the Waqf Board and the state. And the state is saying, either you show the records that you have ownership of this property, or the state is free to take over this property.
No, I'm not for a moment disputing that the Waqf board needs to produce certain relevant documents, where may it be tax-paid receipts or any other documentation to suggest that the property has been allotted to them. But one important factor in property law that we need to, anyways, this particular thing is governed by Waqf law, which has different implications. But nonetheless, possession of property is an important ground or an important point of consideration to establish your claim or right over the certain property. Now, if the state government tomorrow decides that there is a dispute, the dispute will be settled before the appropriate forum. But it is also important to point out that this issue has never come to the forefront up till now. Why is it just 1 year before the election has this matter come about?
No, fair enough. That's a political point and a valid point. I have no dispute against that. I will ask that to Mohan Mishra as well. Why are you politicizing now 1 year before the election? But I don't know how much bearing that will have in law. But be that as it may, what is happening in court right now, the bench, it's a 3-judge bench, has asked the Solicitor General, who was arguing on behalf of the state, Solicitor General Tushar Mehta, what is being suggested is that for 200 years, nothing has been held. That is, no other festival other than Muslim festivals have been held in this Eidgah Maidan for 200 years. Then let nothing happen on it as of now. Now, this is an oral observation, a poser by the bench to the Solicitor General. It doesn't mean that this is the order that they have passed or this is what is binding on the parties concerned. Harish is joining us with more details. The question that the bench is also asking is, what is the pressing need to change the status quo as of now? And in this, I guess you can't run away from the political argument. The state has to answer the question as to why is this being brought up now, 6 months before the election. After all, Ganeshotsav happens every year. Why didn't it happen the year before or the year before that?
Absolutely, Zakka. And there have been petitions earlier as well. This is not the first time that residents approached seeking permission for hosting Ganesh Chaturthi festival here. They've approached earlier as well, and most governments, including the BJP government, did not decide on that. And that's perhaps one of the reasons why the court is asking this question on what is the hurry if it hasn't happened for the 200 years. The other point many are making here is that there is no religious significance for this place to have Ganesh Chaturthi here, or if it doesn't happen here. There are several playgrounds where it happens. So they're asking, there is no religious significance to say that Ganesh Chaturthi celebration in Chamrajpet should happen at the Eidgah Maidan. It could happen at any place. It's held at various street corners as well. So it shouldn't be that the group of residents here insist that it happen at this ground itself. That's another argument many are making, hasn't come out in the court yet. At the same time, you have another point being made, by the way, saying that the Section 3 of Places of Worship Act says there's a bar on the change of religious character of the place. So they are saying constantly the effort is that there is a character here for this ground. The possession might not be with the Waqf Board, but there is a religious character in terms of practice, what's happened, prayers being held for a number of years now. The structure that they refer to, saying that there is a structure which says that this has some sort of a religious character. So the court being convinced that this has a religious character that shouldn't be changed. On the other hand, there's no pressing need to allow Ganesh Chaturthi celebration here, and it's not a place of any importance, especially when it comes to hosting Ganesh Chaturthi celebration here.
Okay, let me also go back to B.S. Arun and get the answer to that political question, because it's a question that I don't think the BJP or the Karnataka state government can run away from, not least because opposition is asking it. But Ganesh Chaturthi has been celebrated for every year. Why is it now, 6 months before the election, this has become a full-fledged battle between the BBMP on the one side? They went to the High Court, and then the High Court gave a ruling, and now both parties are in the Supreme Court. The Karnataka state government is in the Supreme Court, so is the Waqf Board. This has become a high-profile battle. Why now?
As you mentioned, possibly because the ruling BJP wants some issue to go to the elections because already the party is facing brickbats on the administration front. There have been many failures, and the government has not been able to answer them properly. So perhaps as a sort of a diversion, they may have taken up this issue. And it's also a communally sensitive issue, coming in the backdrop of the murders of political activists of the BJP, as well as the Muslims in South Kendra, which is in the Mangalore side, and as well as in Shimaga. So two places in South Karnataka. So this comes in the backdrop of that, and the BJP can keep this, the bogey to continue till the elections if there is no finality for this.
But Arun, if I may also ask a quick question, the issue is also of parity. All right, the order has just come. The order has just come. Status quo to be maintained. All right, status quo to be maintained. That is what the bench has ruled. Justice Banerjee has said interim status quo for 2 days. You have the puja somewhere else and go back to the High Court. So, which means tomorrow, the first day of Ganesh Chaturthi, the puja will not happen at the Eidgah Maidan. The interim status quo will continue for 2 days. The puja can be done elsewhere, is what the court has said. And they have also asked both parties, if they so choose, in this case the Karnataka state, to go back to the High Court for a revised order. So that is the big breaking development as of right now. This is what the bench has held, that as of right now, the status quo should be maintained. You can hold the puja somewhere else. Interim status quo has been given for 2 days, and permission has been given to the parties interested or the parties concerned to approach the High Court once again in case they want a revised order or a modified order. So the Supreme Court order right now from the 3-judge bench headed by Justice Indira Banerjee is that the status quo continues. Both sides will maintain the status quo, which means there will not be any Ganesh Chaturthi celebrations. There will only be, the ground will be used only as a playground for most days of the year. And for 2 days, there will be Ramzan festivities and Bakrid festivities. Otherwise, the status quo as is, as it has existed for the last many decades, will continue, is what the Supreme Court has just held. If we can go across to our reporters, I think Harish is there. Harish, so this is the order from the 3-judge bench that the status quo will continue for 2 days. In the meanwhile, the parties concerned are free to go back to the High Court.
Yes, Zakka, significant order coming in there. Perhaps when the court says you can go back to the High Court, they're referring to the ongoing case in the High Court about the ownership of this place. Remember, it went before a single judge bench. The single judge bench actually gave a stay on giving this for Ganesh Chaturthi and later posted the case for September, especially hearing the aspect of the ownership. Perhaps the ownership battle will now be in the Karnataka High Court. It will be fought there. But on the issue of Ganesh Chaturthi, perhaps Kapil Sibal and the Waqf Board have convinced the court that there is no need to now bring in a new tradition until this ownership battle is sorted and settled, and there is no significance that this place has. It can be held elsewhere. That's what the justice said. You can have puja elsewhere and maintain status quo. It's a huge shot in the arm for the Waqf Board because they always believe that if Ganesh Chaturthi celebrations are allowed, it's in a way backing revenue department's claim that they own this place. They would see this as a huge victory. Has to be seen how the state government now responds, because they were keen on allowing Ganesh Chaturthi celebration. Only when they got to know that this case is landing up in the Supreme Court, they withheld their decision, but they had already thought about how they want to go about this whole Ganesh Chaturthi celebration here.
Harish, give me a moment. I'm also joined by Ananya, our Supreme Court reporter. So heated arguments between some of the top legal minds in the country. Ananya, how and why has the court come to the conclusion to have the status quo continue, at least for the interim?
Well, in fact, Zakka, now the Supreme Court has given out its verdict clearly saying that the status quo should be maintained and the matter is remanded back to the High Court, which would be hearing this petition. Now it has been clearly said that no kind of a puja or namaz, that both the sides would have to maintain the status quo until and unless the High Court decides the finality of this particular order. So heated arguments have taken place between and some of the greatest legal minds of the country, senior advocate Mukul Rohatgi, Dushyant Dave, in fact, Solicitor General Tushar Mehta and Kapil Sibal too. In fact, Mr. Rohatgi and Mr. Mehta continuously argued that the land belongs to the Karnataka government and it's a Sarkari land because there's been footpath, there's been municipal taps in there. However, the Waqf represented by senior advocate Kapil Sibal and Dushyant Dave continuously argued that it has been a 200-year land and has remained Waqf property, and clearly, in fact, saying that the status quo should not be altered with, and the government should not be allowed to, in fact, hold puja or any kind of religious procession shall not be allowed, though the land is open for children to play. And in fact, namaz is also offered 2 times a year, though in the normal course also namaz is not allowed. But now it's very, very clear from the topmost court of the country that no kind of religious activity can continue at this point of time, and interim status quo has to be maintained until and unless the Karnataka High Court actually hears this matter completely and decides onto the same, Zakka.
All right, Ananya, we'll leave it at that. I want to get a word from Mohan Vishwa as well. Mohan Vishwa, your first reaction. All right, he has just left. Do we have any of the other guests who are there still? All right, let's ask Mr. Shivanna, your first reaction to the court's order. The court is saying maintain the status quo, at least in the interim, for the next 2 days, so which means Ganesh Chaturthi, which begins tomorrow, there will be no puja or any kind of religious celebration at the Eidgah Maidan, at least for the next 2 days, and the parties concerned are free to approach the High Court once again.
Now, I welcome this order of the Honorable Supreme Court of India. I think it's a wonderful decision. It is also, to ensure that communal harmony and peace is maintained throughout the state of Karnataka. This issue would only have large and grave implications on the state of Karnataka amongst the mindsets of the two communities as well. Now, it is very important to point out that what is status quo? Even the Karnataka High Court, headed by Justice Chandan Gowda, when the matter came before him, he said, I will pass an order to maintain status quo, which means for over 200 years and for almost 60 years, the Muslim community has been carrying out their festivities in this particular ground. It is true that the entire ground was used as a playground, and the order came suggesting that the entire ground will be used as a playground and the Muslim community will be allowed to offer prayers and conduct festivities on only 2 days, that is on Bakrid and Ramzan, and not offer prayers on any other day. This was the entire situation that came about before the single judge bench. That was challenged before the division bench, which had separate views, but I completely welcome the judgment passed by the Honorable Supreme Court today. I think it is wise and it ensures that communal harmony and peace
Mr.
will
Prasad
be
Gowda,
maintained.
your reaction to the 3-judge bench basically saying maintain status quo. In the meantime, if you feel aggrieved, you are free to approach the High Court.
Yeah, see, at the end of the day, whatever we argue, or whatever we give our observation, whatever we feel like talking, we will talk. But at the end of the day, the Supreme Court is the highest authority, and now it has given the order to maintain the status quo. Let us maintain status quo, and of course, as Mr. Shivanna said, Supreme Court is always concerned about communal harmony. Let us not, even if state government wanted to conduct any religious festival or otherwise now it's not possible. But otherwise, better to take both the community leaders into confidence and do any sort of work that is maybe workable.
Okay, B.S. Arun, I'll give you the final word. Do you see this issue getting resolved peacefully, or do you believe that it'll go back to the High Court and ultimately it'll have to be settled on a question of ownership?
It has to be a legal decision, Zakka, because there are so many issues that needs to be resolved in this title deed. So it's good that the Supreme Court has pushed the matter back to High Court. But I just want to point out one or two things here. The High Court had given a judgment last week and has empowered the state government to take a call on this. And the state government was about to take a call, and the Waqf board went to the Supreme Court. Now there is one more Eidgah issue, Zakka, in Karnataka, and that is the Hubli Eidgah Maidan issue. It had been for a long time. It was a tussle between the BJP and the Waqf board there. And today, the Karnataka High Court has given the commissioner there in Hubli to take a decision on this, on holding Ganeshotsav there. You might remember it is this Hubli Idgah Maidan issue which made Uma Bharti resign as Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister. So there's a political history for that.
Okay, B.S. Arun, thanks very much for that. We'll see how this story plays out. It's political, it's legal. At least for the moment, the Supreme Court seems to have put a full stop, if not a comma, on this issue. We'll take a quick, in fact, right on the other side, Anusha will be joining you with the biggest exclusive.